many of you joining us today. And I'm pleased to introduce our three guest speakers for this call. We have Antonio Arranz, who's CEO of DHL Express in Mexico, Greg Hewitt, CEO of DHL Express US, and Andrew Williams, CEO of DHL Express Canada. My name's Dan McGrath, and I'm the head of the Communications, Sustainability and Brand team for DHL here in the Americas. The three gentlemen who are joining me on the call today bring a huge wealth of experience in the international express industry. They are, in our view, uniquely positioned to comment on some of the trade opportunities that exist in this region, and we hope also to help all of you navigate your way through them and to take advantage to grow your business. One of the main drivers behind today's call was the fact that DHL, in partnership with the NYU Stern School of Business in New York, produces a piece of research each year called the DHL Global Connectedness Index, or GCI. You'll be hearing a lot about the GCI on this call. It offers some perspectives on levels of globalization around the world and which countries are most connected internationally. We believe that the GCI provides a great context to a discussion around trade, and it can also offer insight into trade opportunities for any business that's wanting to expand internationally. And I hope that includes many of you. There's also lots of rich insight for our customers in this region. One of the main themes that economists and analysts have looked at in recent years has been that of regionalization and how trade links are strengthening between neighboring countries. So in that sense, we thought it would make sense to bring together insights from one of the largest regional trading blocks in the world, that's North America, and to look together with you at the potential this region has, particularly for intra-regional trade. Obviously, I would anticipate that the recent UCMCA agreement, would be a topic that's of great interest to many of you, so we'll also touch on that today. So to kick things off, I'd like to ask our speakers to take us quickly through what the GCI is, what the main findings are, and what implications they see for this region from the 2020 findings. Going in alphabetical order, let's start with Antonio Arranz. Antonio, over to you.
Thanks, Daniel, and hello, everyone. Very, very happy that you join us. And thanks also to Greg and Andrew that are going to host with me this. First of all, what is DHL Global Connectedness? And it is divided in four important parts. One is people flows. People flows, what is inside? Migration. We are talking about migration is one of the most important things that we have in our lives. Everyone, I think, has a person that migrated to one place to the other. Then tourism. Tourism is a critical item. Now with COVID, also we are seeing that tourism is decreasing and is having a major impact on this connectivity measurement. And then, of course, education. If you are studying abroad and if you are doing other studies, then we want to understand you are going to another country or not. Then the other one is information flows. With this world, we have voice calls, research collaboration, internet bandwidth. So we need to measure that part that is critical in this new world. And then we have capital flows, and it's how much money the countries are receiving in foreign direct investments and the portfolio equity that they are having. And for this call, we are going to focus in the trade flows, that is the merchandise trade and the service trade. Then how we measure the GCI? The GCI has two dimensions. One is breadth, and then the other is depth. Depth effectively measures how much of your total flows are international as opposed to domestic. In the case of trade, for example, it asks how much of your overall GDP comes from international trade. An economy like Singapore will score very highly on this, while the United States, which has a huge domestic economy, might score relatively low on that. Breadth basically measures how widely dispersed your flows are. In other words, how many countries do you trade with and over what distance on aggregate? A country like the UK, with long historical ties with countries around the world, will score highly on this. The GCI measures all of this across 169 countries. using 3.5 million data points across 13 measurement areas within these 4 types of flows. It then balances their depth and breadth to produce a ranking based on connectedness.
Thank you, Antonio. Greg Hewitt, would you please take us through the main findings from the latest edition of the GCI?
Sure, Dan. But I think before I get into this year, one of the things the group should know is we've been producing this study, the GCI, since 2011, and there's been 2 insights that have been consistent year in and year out. The first being that the world is not nearly as connected as people assume. Levels of overall connectedness are actually typically very low, and there's a huge potential to increase them, despite the perception that it's often created about globalization being such a powerful force. The other is that more connectedness is typically associated with greater prosperity and GDP growth. The countries that rank very highly in the GCI tend to be well-developed economies with a high quality of life. The Netherlands, for example, is ranked first every year, followed by markets like Singapore, Switzerland, and the UAE, and of course the UK. This year's report has generated 10 key findings. Many of them have been heavily influenced, of course, by the COVID-19 pandemic. The first is that the pandemic is expected to trigger a decline in connectedness levels for last year, but still not below the levels of the 2008-9 economic crisis. This suggests that globalization remains alive and well. The second is that people flows have dropped dramatically. This should not come as a surprise for everyone dialing in from home in their home office today. Third, in relation to that, however, cross-border information flows actually have grown dramatically as people have taken to their phone and the internet to maintain their business and personal relationships. Capital flows did take a knock, but they started to recover, particularly thanks to strong action by governments and central banks. On number 5, perhaps surprisingly to some, despite a sharp drop-off at the beginning of last year, trade flows actually rebounded in a relatively strong sense to the back half of the year. As mentioned earlier, the Netherlands is the most connected country overall. Singapore scores highest on depth, while the UK has the highest breadth of international flows. While all of these countries are recognized as global hubs, it will of course be interesting to see the impact of Brexit on the UK in the years to come. Number 7 is that Europe is the most connected region. 8 out of the 10 most connected countries are there, and it's perhaps no surprise given the high level of integration within the EU. For example, North America leads the world on information and capital flows as we see the influence of Wall Street and Silicon Valley in those scores. We see a number of countries that are punching well above their weight, particularly in Southeast Asia, thanks to the role many of these markets are playing in regional supply chains. This is maybe where we can have a long-term opportunity or outlook for Latin America, looking and learning from what these countries have done. Number 9, trade tensions are seen to pose a threat to globalization, with the US-China dispute being a particular source of tension, but there's still not a wholesale move to regionalization, despite all the talk of it. And finally, as we emerge from the pandemic, there are signs within the study that measures to strengthen global connectedness could help countries enjoy faster economic growth and speed up the recovery.
Thank you, Greg. Andrew Williams, perhaps you wouldn't mind sharing your perspectives on what this means for the Americas region?
Yeah, thanks, Dan. And Antonio, Greg, great to be with you guys. Hello, everyone, and a special thanks to all of our customers joining today as well. Yeah, you know, to put it in sort of simple terms, the GCI has shown us that there's a huge opportunity that our region can leverage to help drive additional growth. And maybe before we get into the specific results for our North America markets, I'd note that the Americas region markets overall don't score particularly high on the GCI rankings. My own market, Canada as an example, is actually the highest ranking country in the region. And that's great, but we're still only in the 32nd position. Some of this is due to the fact, of course, our domestic economies, particularly of our three markets, are relatively strong compared to the import and export activity that we see. And in other markets, particularly further south, there are also certain structural barriers, such as the regulatory and custom environments, even some protectionist measures that can impact trade and investment. Now, when you look at the breadth of our trading activity here in North America, many of our import and export activities are actually concentrated between our three countries. So this shows on one hand just how important an agreement like USMCA is, but also indicates there's a real opportunity here for all of our countries to broaden our trading activities to reach other global markets. I'd say there's also been a mixed picture of connectedness across the region in the last period. The US, Canada, Mexico actually all saw small relative drops in their position year over year. This may have reflected some of the uncertainties around the renegotiation of NAFTA USMCA. Other examples, Panama saw a dramatic drop in its ranking. That might reflect some of the short-term declines they've seen in their trade and capital flows. But conversely, markets like Trinidad and Tobago saw a significant increase in their own ranking. And in fact, many southern South American countries also rose at a reasonably healthy rate. At the same time, North America as a region holds the second place ranking in the overall global connectedness, leading on breadth, but then ranking third on depth. However, and as our focus is today on trade, we actually sit last in the trade pillar depth category. We've achieved the top breadth ranking by combining our large intra-regional flows with strong ties to Europe and Asia and markets that you would expect are also significant trading partners for us, including countries like China, the UK, and Japan. And so I'd say overall, despite the impact of COVID and issues that we've had with trade disputes, we believe we've really got a great platform here to build upon. And specifically, looking just at the fact that North America leads the world on information and capital flows, this tells us there might be an opportunity to expand on that model and subsequently increase our trade flows.
Okay, thank you, Andrew. Thanks, Greg. Thanks, Antonio. Just to run very quickly through each of the individual markets, perhaps each of you could take us through the main GCI findings for your markets. So changing the order slightly, Greg, can we perhaps start with you?
Sure, Dan. The U.S. currently ranks 37th in overall connectedness, while we rank second on breadth, which is a good reflection of the global reach of all things American goods, but also capital and information. We're 117th in depth. This is really due to the huge concentration of GDP in the domestic market. This can be seen as both a source of strength, but as we are continuously guiding our customers, a potential weakness in terms of diversification or the lack thereof it. You can also see a lot of the concentration in terms of geography. 12% of the US international flows are concentrated in Canada, our #1 market for connectedness, while Mexico ranks #3 with 9% behind China and ahead of the UK. At the same time, no markets in Latin America, for example, even feature in our top 10. The GCI researchers also took a look at structural factors that contribute. The US scores very well in terms of doing business, logistics performance, and shipping connectivity, and scores well on tariffs, despite the more protectionist approach that we've seen the administrations take in the most recent years. In short, while there's a relatively low ranking of the US is not necessarily a cause for concern due to the strength of our domestic economy, we believe there is a relatively easy opportunity to convert some of our breadth in the form of the country's truly global reach and connections into increased depth. In other words, the US could generate and benefit from a larger percentage of GDP from international trade.
Thank you, Greg. Antonio Arranz on Mexico.
Yeah, so Mexico ranks 65th on the GCI, making the 5th most globally connected economy in the Americas. Like the US, it has a higher rating for the breadth of its flows than it does for the depth, which is common for countries with large populations and a stronger domestic economy. The dependency of Mexico on the US in terms of global connectedness is clear from the fact that 73% of its international flows are with the US. Canada ranks 3rd behind China with just 2%. While we expect this relationship to stay extremely strong, there is a clearly an opportunity to increase trade links with other markets. In terms of ease of doing business and logistics performance, we still rank in what I will call a mid-table position. We rank only behind Colombia in terms of shipping connectivity in Latin America. Coming out of the pandemic, a lot of attention will likely be paid to the potential role that Mexico can play in helping business around the world to diversify their supplier base away from Asia, and in the case of this region, bring production closer to home. It offers a competitive alternative in terms of labor and other factor costs in manufacturing, and our country is working hard to attract investment. This has been helped not only by the USMCA, but also by other trade agreements, such as the one signed with Europe in April 2020.
Thank you, Antonio. Canada, Andrew Williams.
Yeah, Dan, we also suffer, but also in many ways benefit from a similar high level of dependence on the US in terms of our international flows. Although it's not quite as high at 57%. Mexico is also within our top 10 and in 8th place, but it is just 2% of our flows. And behind markets such as China, the UK, France, and India. Now, when it comes to merchandise trade, the links are much stronger. Canada is the second and 5th largest trading partner of the US and Mexico, respectively. So like the US and Mexico, the GCI shows us that we're more heavily weighted towards breadth, having trade links with a broad range of international markets. Although we have a smaller population than the US and Mexico, international trade still accounts for a smaller overall percentage of our GDP than many other markets, so the depth is lower. And I think similar to the US and Greg's point, this points to the fact that there is an opportunity really to capitalize on some of the trade links to build upon a greater proportion of imports and exports. Canada, as I mentioned earlier, is highest ranked market in the Americas region, coming in at 32nd. At the same time, a lot of this is driven by the non-trade flows, and in particular, people, information, and capital all score very highly, both in terms of depth and breadth. We're ranked fairly low on trade, however, 71st for breadth and 99th for depth. And this is despite the fact that we perform relatively well on structural and policy drivers, such as the ease of doing business, where we're ranked 22nd, logistics performance, where we're ranked 20th, and shipping connectivity, where we're ranked 36th. So this could be related to the fact that the huge economy on our border attracts a proportion of the trade opportunity away from us. But at the same time, for me, this also reflects a significant untapped trade opportunity, not just within the North American region, but across the world. And that's a message that we're consistently trying to deliver to our customers. There is a lot of potential in Canada, and that's just potential that isn't fully being realized at this moment.
Yeah, thank you, Andrew. So as many of you on this call will know, a revised regional trade agreement, the USMCA, or the United States-Mexico-Canada Agreement, went into effect last year on July the 1st. The GCI quotes the US Trade Representative's office as saying that this deal is all about modernizing trade rules to support a more balanced reciprocal trade, leading to freer markets, fairer trade, and robust economic growth in North America. I'd like to ask the three of our panelists now how you guys see this impacting your business, what opportunities this new agreement brings, how customers can take advantage of that, and so on. So maybe let's start again with you, Greg Hewitt.
So, Dan, from my perspective, I think DHL, we're always positive on international trade, and any agreement that's meant to help facilitate trade, we're in favor of. And the reason we're positive on the USMCA is really the opportunities it represents for our customers. The increases in de minimis levels in Canada and Mexico will allow these markets an even more attractive position and reduce friction and cost for US businesses looking to trade with them, particularly for the important small business segment in the US. We conducted a survey of over 2,000 small and medium-sized businesses in 2020, which revealed that over half either did not understand how USMCA would benefit their business or did not believe it would have any impact at all. We think this could be due to some residual negativity over the red tape associated with parts of NAFTA, and that many businesses are not aware the USMCA brings some technological advancements and should keep trade barriers low. There's still some work to be done in educating our customers over the opportunity that USMCA represents, but we see nothing but opportunity there. What's important now is that all three countries also take advantage of the opportunity to make themselves competitive globally by fully implementing the trade facilitative measures like de minimis and informal entry levels.
Thanks, Greg. Andrew Williams, any comments from your side?
Yeah, I think, Dan, from my side, right, first I'll say that, on the whole, the modernization of the NAFTA agreement, it was a good thing, particularly given the nature of the markets in which we operate is changing. NAFTA was a roughly 25-year-old agreement, and it was based on technologies and business practices that have been lapped by innovation. So modernization of that deal to address the new challenges and opportunities of the 21st century was key. The biggest change is the role that e-commerce is playing, particularly in driving trade across borders. And we're pleased that it specifically addresses this through ensuring that data can move freely across borders, as an example, and helping and facilitate digital transactions. We saw 5 to 10 years worth of growth in e-commerce in 2020 alone. So this was really very timely for us. Greg mentioned Canada's raised its de minimis value to $40 on a tax basis, $150 from a duty standpoint. And this will allow Canadian consumers access to great products from US and Mexican retailers. It'll also allow our customers to source supplies and materials they might not have access to in their own market. And I would say even more significantly from my perspective, the new USMCA provides a stable framework for trade with our biggest trading partner. Certainty, as we've seen particularly in the context of the current environment, is one of the most important factors in stimulating trade.
Makes absolute sense. Thanks, Andrew. Antonio Arranz, what's your perspective from Mexico?
Daniel, we had the opportunity to meet with the President López Obrador at DHL, and the President was very clear that the TMEC was extremely important to the success of the country. So for Mexico, it's extremely important to be ready for the TMEC. And we are seeing it. 2 years ago, we were seeing a lot of plants slowing down because we didn't know what was going to happen with NAFTA. And now that the new agreement was signed, we are seeing the whole corridor from Mexico City up to the border booming again. And we have two components that are going to help us. One is the nearshoring. Clearly, the COVID is bringing to many companies the question about how to do resilience in the supply chain. And nearshoring is a critical item for that resilience. So Mexico is a natural play to have it in the border or across the country. And then the other one is e-commerce. E-commerce in Mexico, we are in the prehistoric phases. We are 5 years to 10 years behind Europe and the US. So we are now focusing in the domestic e-commerce. But the next version is international e-commerce, that now the big players are doing it, but as we are seeing it in Canada, in the US, and in Europe, that will be in the mid players and the small players. And that's a big opportunity with the TMEC for Mexico, US, and Canada. So we are very, very happy to have a new contract, a new agreement, and it's going to bring challenges because it has legal components on the unions and on the labor, and of course also on the environment. But clearly, I believe as a bloc, we need to work together, Mexico, US, and Canada.
Okay, so thank you, Antonio. The resounding message there is that there's an opportunity from this development. So talking outside specifically of USMCA, where do the three of you see the biggest opportunities, both in terms of inter-regional trade, but also in terms of increased trade outside of North America? Let's start with you, Andrew Williams.
Yeah, thanks, Dan. And, I think to be very clear, I see a ton of opportunity here. Canada is the only G7 country to have free trade agreements with every other G7 market. So this is a huge opportunity for outward-looking Canadian businesses. China, of course, stands out as a trading partner with strong growth potential. But the GCI also speaks to markets such as the UK, France, India, Japan, Germany, the Netherlands, Switzerland, all as markets with links that can certainly be leveraged. Of course, one of the biggest opportunities, again, lies in e-commerce. We've seen businesses of all sizes in Canada, in particular in the last 12 months, take advantage of online retail to reach new international customer bases, and we're confident that will continue to boom. DHL provides a number of platforms to support small business, in particular with their growth aspirations. A recent example locally here in Canada is our Handle with Care campaign, where we provided small businesses the chance to win both an international shipping stipend and then a wellness stipend for their hardworking staff as well. And we're in a strong position to help customers navigate their way through these new areas of operations, such as customs or tax or currency considerations. I mentioned it earlier, Canada has these strong foundations in place in terms of a business-friendly climate, very good logistics infrastructure, and a highly entrepreneurial and international business community. And I know that our policymakers and government are keen to encourage more international trade opportunities for Canadian business. So now it's really down to Canadian businesses to see the opportunity that lies both within North America and beyond, and then target that even more aggressively.
Thanks, Andrew. Greg, what's your perspective?
I guess I would say for U.S. businesses, particularly small and medium enterprises, there truly is a global opportunity. And as Andrew mentioned, e-commerce has accelerated that. I think we had it 5 to 7-fold over the last year. What we see is there is a temptation to focus on the big domestic market and customers, particularly given the size of that domestic market. But in doing that, many U.S. businesses are passing up on a profitable growth opportunity and a chance to really diversify their own customer base. And all of this can be done relatively easily without additional risk or ramp up of their resources. Companies like DHL are here to provide you with both the direct connection to customers in other markets, like through our big yellow machine around the globe, without a need for you to build out warehousing or distribution networks at an early stage, but also with the infrastructure and expertise, I think of it, the people side of it, to guide you through the perceived complexities of global trade and customs related to imports and exports. You could very easily be surprised by where the demand for your product is and how it finds you. So even if you want to take it slowly, the USMCA effectively creates an expanded marketplace that you can dip your toes in by going to Canada and Mexico. But beyond that, those great neighbors of ours, the GCI points to markets like the UK, Japan, Germany, India, Netherlands, Switzerland, and Ireland as markets with strong connections to the US, which makes them worth looking at. And of course, there's China. And I know there's trade tensions there, and that may continue, but the US and China are just simply too big to ignore each other or to allow trade to fall away completely.
Yeah, Greg, and I think you've also got Australia in the mix as well there, which we probably, it doesn't get recognized within the GCI, but I know that's an important market as well for you guys, right?
Yeah, very big outbound market. I mean, Dan, when I look at it, usually when I talk to customers, the exports or their export market is often only 10% of all their orders on the e-commerce side. And the three markets that come up quickest are Canada first, and then the UK and Australia. I think what we keep, and therefore those are all very big markets for us on the export side. But there's definitely a chance to broaden that, and we're constantly talking to companies about trying to change that balance and get to more 50-50 by doing some things and changing some things either in their shopping cart or using different marketplaces or technologies that might make them more attractive to different markets around the globe.
And I know there's a currency element to that, but I think the other thing that's obvious and clear from those three markets you've named is there's a cultural affinity at the very least at a language level. And I think that takes us nicely on to Antonio Aranz and some of the opportunities you might see for Mexican business.
Yes, so same as Canada, we have signed several agreements with multiple countries, Europe, South America, then we have with Asia, and we have not leveraged that because we are so dependent on the US, Canada, 80%, that we have a big opportunity to manage that. And where the opportunity will come is that we saw China as an opponent for the labor and to have the finished products produced. But clearly now, with the nearshoring and what is happening with the resilience of the supply chain, we are going to see more and more intermediate products being here in Mexico, shipped to Mexico, connected and finalized in Mexico, and shipped across the globe. And that's a big opportunity for Mexico to be the final factory. And then the other part that is key for Mexico is the south border. South border, we need to help the south border, the countries in Central America, also for the immigration situation with the US. So that's going to play an important role in Mexico and Central America, because if we don't solve that, then we will have a big pressure in the US with migration. So that's something that you are going to see more and more the politicians speaking about how we can do more trade within the region.
Thanks, Antonio. Yeah, and obviously, language will give Mexican businesses a clear opportunity south of the border, both in Central America and beyond, further south as well. But I think that brings us nicely to the end. But to round things off, before we open the Q&A, perhaps I could ask each of you to provide one recommendation on the first steps that a business in your market, someone on this call today, should take if they're thinking of leveraging this opportunity and targeting overseas customers. Maybe we could start with Antonio Arranz.
Yes, there are a lot of trade fairs. We at DHL also can help, but there are many ways that now you can learn about how to attack these markets. I think I have seen every single country, federal governments, and also state governments asking for or putting money on how you can learn about that, because that's where they can bring employment to the states and to the country. So it's only the time that you need, because there are many resources that you can use, and don't be worried about that. With the new environment, with the electronics, with the web pages, you can find a lot of information very easy, and at DHL we can help.
Thanks, Antonio. Andrew, any recommendation from your side?
Dan, I think it starts with just doing it right. Target all markets. And I'll make a rather bold statement here. I think that too many Canadian companies think of themselves as international once they've started exporting to the US. 99.5% of Canadian businesses are SMEs, so companies with less than 500 employees. And a full 80% of those companies that only export to the US market. So we encourage companies to really think big and take advantage of the importance and the relevance around the brand made in Canada, because it's a brand that can be capitalized upon with the right support and approach. And I'd say two things that I would offer as advice. One, a little bit like the other gentleman has said, take advantage of some of the programs that are in place. Of course, federal programs like the Export Development Bank, but even at a very local level. And I think to the city of Hamilton, where we have one of our largest facilities here in Canada, their local Chamber of Commerce runs a trade accelerator program. It's called TAP. And so far since 2015, they've actually helped 940 local SMEs generate an average of 33% export growth just through their own local programs. And then secondly, I would say take advantage of the very diverse population here in Canada. One thing we didn't talk about in the GCI, Canada ranks #1 in the study in terms of international migration and #4 in terms of international students. So you have lots of opportunity if you're looking to export to markets around the world to potentially find team members that have come from those countries. And that's a great opportunity that's not to be overlooked.
Thanks, Andrew. Greg, any remarks from your side, recommendation?
Yeah, when I look at the GCI, a lot of the focus is on globalization, which is an important mega trend. But very closely tied to that mega trend is one called digitalization. And I think what I would say to everyone on the webinar is look at the important role that technology plays in facilitating global trade. What we've seen is the companies that are most successful find a way to eliminate the barriers that borders bring by speaking in the language of choice, eliminating the complexity of tariffs, or as you noted, Dan, currency exchange. And there are a number of players, both on the marketplace side, people like Magento, Shopify, Adobe, who help facilitate and help companies build their shopping carts in that view. there are also some providers like Globally, eShop World, that have the technology that helps take the complexity of currency exchange, payment methodologies, even language translation, and really getting your harmonized text code library in sync so that to the consumer, it seems seamless. Making that seamless will have a big lift in terms of order and success rate. And linked right into that, and very timely right now with Brexit going on, is the importance of your shopping cart and your orders transmitting good quality information about the products that you're sending. Because that information is incredibly important for companies like ours to be able to clear them and get them delivered seamlessly for you. And as the EU and UK have gone through that change, we've never seen that more important than before. And it's a big focus for us with all of our customers as we go through and make sure their data is clean and what we're transmitting is clean to customs so that we don't suffer delays. Because delays, as we know, are what erodes consumer confidence. And what we want to make sure is that order is received quickly and with quality. That's a hallmark for DHL.
Thanks, Greg. So yeah, thank you, Andrew, Antonio, Greg. You've provided some great insight on the exciting market opportunity here in the North Americas region and beyond. I'd like to now open the floor to some questions from the audience. You have an opportunity to type your questions in, and I'm working with this interface for the first time, so I hope I get it all right. But I see one question already, and hopefully I can bring up others, or I'll ask the team that's in the background of this call to draw them to my attention if I'm missing anything. But the first question I see is, we ship worldwide from Ontario, so I'm guessing, Andrew, this is coming your way. And our greatest issue is finding the information from SMEs for global trade requirements. Is there any advice you can provide on that? Is there a single source of information to support people who want to expand and understand the markets better?
Yeah, and I think I'll go back a bit to my last statement there, Dan, around some of the programs that are available, run both through federal and local governments. What I can say, every government that I've spoken to in any part of Canada is interested in helping their local businesses go global. And so, whether you're talking about some of the bigger and maybe more complicated federal programs through organizations like the Export Development Bank, or if you want to go a little bit more local, I would encourage you to first start by reaching out to like your local or city government and understanding if they have programs like the City of Hamilton has that I mentioned around the Trade Accelerator Program. Most will, and will start to connect you through the resources or with the resources you're going to require as a business. And then certainly from our side at DHL, we are partnering with many of these organizations, running our own information sessions about international trade sessions just like this, Dan. In fact, with the City of Hamilton, we're putting something together right now with their Trade Accelerator Program to explain the complexities of customs and regulatory requirements around the world. So we become involved in those discussions as well. But always a good start if you check in with your local government or city officials.
Okay, thanks, Andrew. I see another question that I can field is, will these slides be made available? Yes, we will share them with, at the very least, everybody who's attended this call. I imagine also we'll make them available to people who signed up for the call. Next question, also coming your way. Obviously this sparked some interest on the side of our Canadian customers here, this whole topic, and this call to action. If I'm a Canadian-based small business, but recently I've been operating it from Mexico, I found it very expensive to ship my goods to Canada. What can I do to lower that cost? So maybe, I don't know whether that's more towards you, Antonio, or somewhere between the two of you. I don't know. Do you want to start with you, Antonio, some guidance on how to bring down costs on shipping to Canada?
Yeah, I think it will depend on the speed that the product will need to arrive to Canada. Because it's a very long distance, normally you use air. But if you truly need a cheaper price, and you may need to go by ground, but ground will mean that you will need to cross the U.S. plus Canada, and that's double duties and double customs. So that's why many companies prefer to avoid that hassle and go direct to air. And so in DHL, we have two types of businesses. We have the express that we are here, but also you have the cargo. And on the cargo, you simply go and say, okay, I don't have a specific date of when it can be shipped. And depending on that, you can have a very low rates. But that you will depend extremely on the air capacity of the airplanes. So that's the difficulty from Mexico to Canada, is to do by ground double customs or by air. If you don't urgently need expedite business, then you should go through cargo.
So anything on the Canadian side, Andrew, that you could recommend to businesses?
Building on that a little bit, and it may seem counterintuitive, but and assuming perhaps you are a e-commerce seller, if you can encourage your customers to purchase more at the same time and consolidate your order, that gives you an opportunity to take advantage of pricing systems that we have that reward volume as it relates to weight. So that can be another way quite easily that you can look at your shipping costs and make them the most efficient for you and for your customers.
Yeah, and what I'd do maybe is just direct that to you as well, Greg, because I think, it's a general question. I know that Express is not seen typically as the cheapest per kilo option, certainly not, but it doesn't necessarily mean on a holistic total cost basis, taking into account things like, inventory, being able to reduce your inventory levels by quicker shipping, and also, offering different options such as premium on your website. I know, Express has a strong role to play and can be used creatively. Is there anything that you would add in terms of how we would help, not necessarily drive down costs, maybe that's not the objective, but help customers achieve the right balance between the cost overall within their network and obviously maintaining the quality of service?
Well, certainly when we talk a little bit about where to use Express versus deferred or ground, one of the things when you start to weigh the balanced equation of cost would be on the deferred side. Quite often you're, as Andrew said, consolidating orders or product and shipping more of it at one time. But usually that has to be inventoried somewhere. So you've got brick and mortar costs there and other costs around it. When we're talking that if you went Express, you reduce the need for distributors, the need for warehouses, the need for other, and you have a single source that can reach. We reach just about every market in 48 to 72 hours. Our two neighbors in 24. So again, when you look at your global supply chain, one option is, can I have fewer centers to ship from, ship more like a just-in-time inventory, flow fast? Your cost of shipping might be higher in terms of an express carrier, but your cost to carry in terms of inventory, facilities, labor, and such, you have to weigh all of that in. I think when we talk to an e-commerce company, it's a little bit different. To me, it's not about the cost of shipping in that order. It's about how do you maximize revenue, and part of maximizing revenue is improving customer experience. And what we've seen, there are numerous studies that show the speed with which people get their orders, the reliability, the quality of that packaging and the delivery, all of that goes into the likelihood to repurchase and the likelihood to repurchase sooner. So usually what we look at is you've got to weigh is what's the value of that shopping cart and how realistic is it that if you got the product to them in 24 or 48 hours with a great delivery service, would they speak about you on social media in a positive light, potentially go on and need your product sooner and reorder? So yes, you might pay as a unit cost a little bit more for that order, but the other things outweigh it. There's no doubt that sending things in the air will always cost more than sending it in the ocean or on the ground, but you have to weigh out how it influences your supply chain and what goes into your cost and your profit service value chain.
And then I would like to add that one item that is critical for the e-commerces, and some of them do not look at it, is the de minimis. The minimis is extremely important. Courier companies, we can have the de minimis, at least in the Mexican law. The only ones that can have de minimis is that if you ship it to courier. And many companies do not understand the impact of that, and they sell above the minimis. And then you create a lot of customs problems for the customers and customer hassle. If you focus on selling below the minimis, then the service improves a lot and it pays a lot because you don't have all these extra charges. So the minimis is an extremely point. If you are selling e-commerce, think about the minimis around the world. In every country is different, but you need to think about it.
Thank you. Thanks. And just to add one small comment to all of that, we did a study a few years ago with McKinsey, in which we got an understanding that simply by offering an express option on your website can unlock pockets of demand where you might least expect them. That's the beauty of the internet these days. And we had customers in Europe before I moved here. I was based in Europe who, they'd be sitting in the UK and receive an order from Estonia, which is also in Europe, but they think I've never done any business with Estonia. And I think the express option allows you to dip your toe in and access those markets to customers who, might have less pricing. They're less driven by pricing than they are by the demand for your product. And you can unlock and sample new markets and open them up. And I'm sure the guys, I'll come to it if we run out of questions, but there are tools out there that can also help you to more easily translate your offering to other markets like Globally and Magento and so on. Maybe we'll come back to that. We have another question. So are there any programs you're aware of that deal with exporting technology to Colombia, similar to what one of the presenters stated involving the Canadian program? I'll throw that out to the three of you. Are you aware of any programs about shipping technology to Colombia?
I'll start, Dan. So I can't say specifically about the export of technology to Colombia, but maybe we can mark that one down and revisit. There's certainly, an increasing number of trade deals as a general statement between Canada and many South American nations. But Dan will probably have to come back and take a look at a specific Colombia technology opportunity.
Yeah. Okay, and I mean, one thing I would add, there's a whole variety of programs. We've got the LATAM eShop program, for example, that if you're an online retailer, we may, provide essentially a kind of a consolidated marketplace with the delivery option included that gives customers in a country like Colombia access to online platforms, including the big boys like Amazon and so on, and I think Compra Fácil, which is designed to support smaller businesses. So we can perhaps provide some additional information with that on that. I would ask you maybe just to follow up, whoever asked that question directly with us via our contacts, maybe even direct it to me, daniel.mcgrath@dpdhl.com. We have a question, and I'm sorry, I'm not sure. It's saying the same question, but for Greg. Maybe it's been addressed already. I'm not sure what the original question there was. Perhaps if we didn't answer it, you could just put it in full. Let me just scan through. So does DHL have plans to accept cryptocurrency? So who's the Bitcoin expert among the three of you?
I think from what I have heard from the global finance community is that we are not ready yet on that, because as we are in 220 countries and territories, we need to comply with the fiscal laws of those countries. And so it's a very complex problem, because if you accept the cryptocurrency in one place, then you may enter in a problem, as an example, with the US. In the US, if you pay with the cryptocurrency or you hold the cryptocurrency, you need to report to the IRS. So that's a problematic thing. And I know, because as an individual, I know that if I buy a cryptocurrency, I will need to report to them. So that's a critical problem that the cryptocurrencies are having at this moment to be accepted, is that there are fiscal problems, not only for DHL, but for the individual.
Okay, and yeah, again, that would be one where I would say if you want to address it separately, please approach us and we'll source an answer perhaps from one of our finance team beyond what Antonio's provided there. How was DHL impacted by the import and export of the vaccines in the world? So I think we've got a good export perspective with Greg Hewitt and a good import perspective, particularly with Antonio. Maybe we could start with you, Greg.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because myself in the US, I'm actually waiting for that flow to start, because one of the things anyone who's here in the US would know is very important to the administration was that the producers of the vaccine here in the United States needed to demonstrate that they could satisfy the US requirements before they would allow the export of the vaccine. So although there's a lot of production in the United States, it's satisfying a domestic need right now. And what we're seeing is vaccines from Europe that are being produced in Europe are transiting through our hub in Cincinnati and going on to critical markets in South America, like Chile as an example. And of course, I'll hand it off for final mile delivery in Mexico for Antonio. I am hopeful, and what we're being told is that as the US reaches the point where there is enough vaccinations within the US to satisfy the domestic market, we will start to be a key provider of exporting US manufactured vaccines into key Latin American markets. So maybe, Antonio, over to you on how you're handling the delivery of those vaccines.
Well, first of all, I think everyone will need to know that we will need across the globe 15,000 flights to move the vaccines for all the countries. So that's a lot of work. For me, bringing the vaccines has been a doctorate in logistics. I can tell you, it has been the most challenging task that I have ever seen. I am extremely proud of DHL, of what we have done. We have 10,000 people working on the vaccines project across the divisions. And clearly the most important part is visibility, and communication. Because it's not only with the laboratory, but also with the government that you need to align. So that's a clear communication that we need to have in the several fronts. And the most important thing is to ensure that everyone understands that it's in benefit of the humanity. So every time you have a stop, someone is stopping you, you need to convince this person that it's in benefit of someone else. And that has been our work, is to be at the beginning like a prayer, sacerdote, so going and selling the idea that the countries will need to be prepared. And then once they buy the idea, is to do the physical logistics of doing it. Very proud. We have had 100% on-time deliveries, and really, really proud. Very difficult times, but overall, I think it's going to ramp up, and you're going to see more and more and more of these shipments going across the globe, because clearly the UN will need to accelerate the deliveries to Africa and to the small countries that they don't have money to buy, and they will need to go through the UN program. But overall, I can tell you, extremely difficult. Really proud of what we have done.
And Dan, if I may there, because I love Antonio's term of doctorate in logistics, and I think there are probably thousands of people around the world that earned their doctorate in logistics over the past year studying this. And I think that's very timely as we're talking about the connectedness index, right? Because that really goes, the distribution of vaccines worldwide and how that has come together so quickly really goes to show how important connectedness is. And when we're talking about these topics of trade flows, why it's just so critical that the world is as connected as it is, and why the world needs to keep becoming more connected, because we're able to leverage those connections in a real life crisis right now with the distribution of the vaccines moving around the world as fast as it has.
Yeah, that's a great point, Andrew. And I say, everybody's earned 2 doctorates. I would say everyone's become a logistician, and everybody's become an amateur epidemiologist as well over the last 12 to 14 months. So we've all learned something out of this, but yeah, it's great that logistics has been front and center. So we've got time for one, maybe two, depending on how quickly we get through the questions. Got a question from Ignatius, who runs a small e-commerce business out of Minnesota, importing or involved in Liberian customers, Liberian business in West Africa. And this, I think, is a good way of touching on the international opportunity beyond the North America region. He deals exclusively with markets in Liberia, and he's asking, is it possible for DHL to support with delivery for prospective customers from Liberia to the USA? Greg, I think I know the answer, but do you want to just talk quickly about how that might work?
Admittedly, I am not an expert on the Liberian-U.S. trade lane and all of the complexities that might surround the import or export between the two nations. What I would say is we pride ourselves on having a local strength globally. And what we would do is have our customer operations group liaise with the customer operations group in Liberia to make sure we understood how we would need to set up the customer master file, understand the product that was coming in, understand any restrictions that there might be on either side around trade in those goods. Sometimes it's limit of quantities, limit of values. Every country is different, and what we have in our customs clearance team is the expertise to consult on that. So what I would do is, if that individual can connect with me through the group running the webinar, I would put that business in touch with my local team in Minnesota and the COG team, who would have a look at it and tell you what are the do's and don'ts, what can and can't we do. What I do know is we have the most extensive network across Africa. And if anybody can do the import and export legally and compliantly, it will be us, and we will be able to do it faster than anyone else. I'm confident of that, but not knowing the product and not knowing the exact limitations in terms of the price point and the quantities, I'd have to defer to my COG team, Dan.
Okay, and then just to close it out, another taste of an entrepreneur, and the experience they're having. Now, maybe it's the last question. I recognize there were an awful lot of questions that I'm seeing, and I'm sorry I didn't vet them. I've just been pulling up the ones I could access, but we will commit to get back to you on these, or I would ask again, my email is daniel.mcgrath@dpdhl.com. You can send it to dhl.com and it will get to me as well. But just one final question. Thank you very much for doing this webinar. I have questions related to the trade of green coffee around the Americas. One of the biggest challenges of my supply chain in origin countries such as Colombia or Guatemala is to empower farmers to sell their green coffee directly to roasters so they can be part of the trade. How does DHL support the trade of this type of commodity? And I'll just maybe ask you if any of you is able to offer that, and maybe in a broader context, what insights that gives for other people with their products trading across the region.
Well, I have a little experience in this area, and that we've worked with a partner that does ethically sourced coffee out of Ecuador, and we've worked very closely with them to work on importing their coffee into the United States and into Canada. We've tried. One of the big challenges that the individual put the question down is there is a need often to have some form of local roaster and distributor. So what we've tried to do is put partners together to facilitate that. I've had a big initiative ongoing trying to change the coffee. I have more than 110 facilities in the United States, and I've been trying to turn it all over to green coffee and work with a company around that. So I know it's not easy, but it is one that we are well versed in and our team can help, but we would need partners in that to do so. I see Andrew nodding like he may have some experience on that as well.
Yeah, we're going through the exact same thing, Greg, and making sure that, and I know the partner you're speaking of, and trying to get them access as well to the machines that we use in our own facilities here in Canada too. And it's all of these things really, they come down quite often to local connections and putting people together. And one of the advantages that we have here in Canada, I know it's the same in the US and Mexico, we have big local sales teams, local customer service that can work together and help bridge these gaps and bring partners together. And so that's where I would encourage you to connect through your local sales rep who can help us understand how we can help you connect, in my case in Canada, or in Greg's case in the US.
Good. I thank you to all of you. I see a huge number of questions, and what I will do, as I say, I think that it's great that everyone was so engaged on this, and I'm sorry we only had 1 hour to work with today, but we will. I would ask the team in the background to please try and capture all of those questions so that we can then put together some responses and maybe share them either on a consolidated basis, or if we can see you ask them, we'll come back to you directly. There's a few specific questions in there. Some I think have been answered already. But I would invite all of you to keep the dialogue going with DHL. I mean, our message to you is we're very much open for business and helping you be open for business to the world. And even where, you know, the trade has points of friction and so on, it's our business to try and reduce them and help you navigate your way through them, whether that's within our network or, as the gentleman just mentioned, through partnerships where we can get creative and design solutions for you. So yeah, thank you to our three speakers, Antonio, Andrew, Greg, really appreciate it. There will be further calls on different markets. There's one coming up soon on Mexico that will be in Spanish for those of you that have suffered your way through my accent or any of the other accents on the call. But I do appreciate you investing your time, and we look forward to continuing conversation with all of you. Thank you very much. Stay safe and have a great day. We'll be in touch soon.
Thank you. Bye.
Take care, everyone. Thank you so much.
Thank you.